Hello students, I welcome you all to this class. In this class I will start discussing mechanics, and I will begin with Newton's three laws. These laws are called laws of motion because all motions of material bodies are governed by these three laws. Or by studying these laws we can predict the motion of all the material bodies. These laws were discovered very long back, that is in the year 1687 by British scientist Sir Isaac Newton. Actually, these three laws are applicable to the case of the motion of macroscopic bodies. Macroscopic bodies are the bodies we see in our daily life, and Newton's laws are applicable only to the motion of macroscopic bodies. The study of motion of macroscopic bodies is called classical mechanics, and microscopic bodies or particles like atoms, molecules, electrons, protons, etc. They are governed by different set of laws, and the mechanics of microparticles is called quantum mechanics. So we have classical mechanics and quantum mechanics. Classical mechanics is the study of forces acting on large bodies or macroscopic bodies, and quantum mechanics is the study of motion of microparticles. You will study quantum mechanics in the forthcoming semesters, but in the first semester we will study classical mechanics, and the fundamental laws of classical mechanics are the three laws of Newton. They are called Newton's laws, which we will study now. Now I will go to the statement of the first law. This is the first law. Every body continues its state of rest or the state of uniform motion along a straight line unless acted upon by external force, and this will give you a qualitative idea of the force. The property by which a body continues in the state of rest or in the state of uniform motion along a straight line unless acted upon by a force is called inertia. And force is something which changes the inertia. Inertia is the property of a body by which a body cannot move by itself, or a moving body cannot stop by itself. Then I can ask you one question, that is how we are able to move by ourselves. We are walking on the road, we can run, or we can climb on a tree. So many things we can do by ourselves, and a moving bus can be stopped by applying the brakes. So where is the external force coming in these cases? I will give you a brief gap, and you can pause the video and think about the answer to my question. Congratulations to those who found the answers. The answer is that we are moving by ourselves not because of our own force, but by the external force due to friction. When we are walking, we are pushing the earth backwards, and earth is pushing us forwards because of the frictional force. You can very well see that if there is no friction, we are unable to walk. In a slippery surface, we will not be able to walk. Similarly, if you are climbing on a tree, you are pushing the tree downwards, and in turn the tree will push you up. So it is the external force acting by which a body can move. Similarly, when a brake is applied in a vehicle, then the frictional force between tire and a road is acting on the vehicle, and the road is actually acting external force on the vehicle, and the vehicle is stopping due to that force. You very well know that in a slippery road you cannot stop a vehicle because the vehicle will be skidding if we apply some force. So it is the external force which is responsible for starting of a motion or stopping of a motion. So we can say the force is something which tries to change the inertia of a body. Now this second law gives you the quantitative idea of what is the force. According to this law, the rate of change of momentum of a body is directly proportional to external force and takes place in the direction of the force. Rate of change of momentum means change in momentum per second, or change in momentum divided by time taken for that change. Suppose in a time dt, the change in momentum is dp, then change in momentum in 1 second will be dp by dt, and change in momentum in 1 second is called rate of change of momentum. So that dp by dt is proportional to the applied force according to Newton's second law. We may write that equation as F proportional to dp by dt, or F is equal to some constant into dp by dt. Here K is the proportionality constant. Actually we can take a convenient value for the proportionality constant K, because that equation can be used to define the unit of force. Unit of force is actually defined based on that equation. So we can choose a convenient value for the constant K, and the most convenient value for K will be 1. Why 1 is most convenient value? Because if it is 1, you need not write a 1 there. If it is not 1, you definitely have to write that constant there. That is the convenience I am talking. And we will soon be able to know how K can be equal to 1. So for the time being, let us put K is equal to 1 and write the equation as F is equal to dp by dt, and momentum is actually mass into velocity. So substituting that in the equation, we get F is equal to d by dt of mv. Since m is a constant, we can take m outside the derivative symbol and write dv by dt, and dv by dt is the rate of change of velocity, which is the acceleration a. Substituting that dv by dt is equal to a, we get the famous relation F is equal to ma. So this is the equation which follows from the second law of Newton. Now we will come to the definition of unit of force. If we put m is equal to 1 kg and acceleration is equal to 1 meter per second square, then we will get F is equal to 1 into 1. So that is defined as the unit of force. And the unit of force in SI units, it is a Newton, and Newton will be the force which produces an acceleration of 1 meter per second square on a body of mass 1 kg. If you are not putting K is equal to 1 in our original equation here, then that K will come here and you will have to modify the definition of Newton, and definitely choosing K equal to 1 will be the most convenient way in which the equation can be written. If we choose a different constant, that constant also will appear in the equation F is equal to Kma. That will definitely complicate the equations. Now we come to Newton's third law. Because of the simplicity of the statement, all of you will be knowing that, and the statement is for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. That is the Newton's third law. If Newton's third law is true, I will ask you a question. I will put that question in the classroom, and you have to upload your answer in the classroom. And the question is, if for every action, or if for every force there is an equal and opposite force, then those forces will cancel, and how motion will be possible? So that is the question. I will put that question in the classroom, and you have to upload your answer. You have to write the answer in a paper or in your notebook, and take the photo and upload your answer in the classroom. That's all for now. I will continue in the next class.